about you, but when I was in school, they made it sound like Chuck D had built his theory, at least in part, on what was found in the fossils. But according to Chuck D himself, that simply isn't true. So what do the fossils tell us about the history of life on Earth? Well, a century of paleontology since Darwin hasn't changed the picture much. According to one paleontologist, we have even fewer examples of evolutionary transitions than we had in Darwin's time. On the contrary, the fossils show us two things. One is stasis, meaning plant and animal kinds staying the same kind for long periods of time. And two, sudden appearance, meaning no evolution. And this fits perfectly with the expectations of biblical creation, but not evolution. But the problems get even deeper. Even if we assume the evolutionary millions of years, fossils cannot be used to show when something evolved or when it went extinct. Case in point, the coelacanth. According to the Darwinian timeline, this fat-flippered fish lived from 300 million to 80 million years ago. Thus it is assumed that he evolved from something else 300 million years ago and went extinct or evolved into something else 80 million years ago. But here's the catch. Fishing pun. The coelacanth. They're still alive and swimming in the ocean today. Here's what this tells us. Even if we assume the evolutionary timeline, this guy was in the ocean and swimming around for 80 million years without leaving a fossil. But knowing that, how can we know that he didn't live in the 80 million years before leaving the first fossil? Very simply, we can't. But if plants and animals can be around for tens of millions of years without leaving a fossil, then how do we use the fossils to construct an evolutionary sequence from them, even if they did appear in the order Darwin predicted? Very simply, we can't. And there is a long and growing list of living fossils that are throwing this wrench into the Darwinian machine. But it gets worse. Fossils aren't even found in the order that Darwinism predicts. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, hold on now, what about the pictures in my textbook that show that nice evolutionary sequence? Well, here's the trick. This is not the order that the fossils are found in. This is how the fossils are interpreted. This is the way the fossils are arranged by textbooks and museums. But it's not the way that they're found by geologists and paleontologists. This chart is based on Darwinism, not on geology or paleontology. Charts like this are used by geologists and paleontologists to determine the age of rock layers, regardless of where they find it or the age of the layers around it. Here's how it works. Find out what kind of fossils are in the rock. Consult with this chart of index fossils. The chart will tell you, based on those fossils, how old the rock is. You use evolution to determine the age of fossils, and then use the fossils to date the rocks, and then the rocks to date the fossils, and then use the rocks and fossils as evidence of the evolution which you had to assume to begin this process in the first place. The fossils date the rocks, and the rocks date the fossils. This is like using 2-inch rulers to measure each other. How do we know this is accurate? Well, we'll use the second one to measure it. Hey, look at that. Well, how do we know the second one's accurate? Well, we'll measure it with the first one. Boom! Perfect! Evolutionists are trying to use fossils as evidence for evolution. But the only reason they can is because they begin with the evolutionary assumptions to start with. We would never conclude the evolutionary assumptions from the fossils unless we started with the evolutionary assumptions. There's a few things that the fossils do point toward, and it's not evolution. Fossils show the sudden appearance of fully formed created kinds of plants and animals, and stasis, meaning that those kinds stay those kinds, just like Genesis predicts. The fossils also show evidence of a global flood, rapidly burying plants and animals in layers of sediment all over the world, just like Genesis tells us. Thanks for watching. The next chapter, and now all of the chapters in our Defining Evolution series, are up on our new website, abitoforange.com. Thanks for liking and subscribing and sharing this with your friends, and happy nachos! On the contrary, fossils show us two things: stasis, meaning things stay the same, and sudden appearance, both of which fit the predictions of biblical creation and not evolutionism. Oh man, I'm going to turn this whole series into a musical. I am psyched!